Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. Every week, we bring you the story of people who are making the lives of others better. They do this locally, globally, and digitally. We are part of Rotary International, 1 point something million people around the globe in 36,000 clubs. This is a crowd dedicated to the idea of service above self. There is a joy and meaning that comes from helping others, and we believe everybody has that need to get involved in making improvements in their communities, seeing where their talents can allow others to see hope where they may not have before. And in that space, we are talking today with Mike Leggett of Fundashon Awenyo. And Mike, I'll have you adjust my pronunciation on that as needed going forward. He is in Curaçao, or as the locals would call it, Curaçao. And we are excited to learn about the work that he is doing to make education better there, not simply through a given program, but through an investment in people. The idea that systems, through the talents of people, are what allow for significant improvement. And this is an exciting thing for us to explore, not just in the educational space, but I think in the organizational space as well. Mike, what a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the Rotary E Club of Silicon Valley.
Thank you so much, Russian. It's really an honor to be part of your program. Of recent, I've been meeting with other Rotary clubs here in Curaçao, of which I think we have three. I've met with two so far, and it's been wonderful. So this is a nice next step as well to meet with your team virtually. So thank you for having me. And if it's all right, I wanted to just say it's for us, for me, for Awenyo, and that is the right pronunciation. Awenyo is really rooted in the same essence, the same concept as Rotary, that our greatest joy and sense of purpose is to be found when we connect that purpose with something bigger than ourselves, with that of giving to others, a spirit of we speak of service leadership. So that's really pivotal to everything we do. And if I can say, for myself, my own background in short, is also very deeply rooted in that. I was studying in cultural studies at York University in Toronto. And after second year, just felt a disconnect from a deeper sense of purpose and calling, paused life, paused university, paused scholarships, paused everything. And I took a year off to travel to Guyana, lived in the most shanty, squatting area, if you will, without running water, other than a pipe for a few hours in the front yard, of which I would have to bathe in the front yard with shorts while waving at neighbors. No fridge for an entire year. And here I was thinking this was a year for others. It was a year of give back. It's not about Mike. And that year became the most pivotal in discovery of what I actually wanted my career, my calling, my future. So 25 years later, today is I am as closely responding to that inspiration, that dream that came from that time, that shifted my whole educational studies towards Guelph University in it for a master's, doing capacity building and adult education. And many years later, working within Canada for some time with Indigenous educational systems, working abroad, different countries. And finally, as you said, a year and a half ago, my wife and I felt an epiphany to sell everything. At the time, I was day job. I was building sustainable homes, net zero. One of only a few in Canada that were building at the highest standards you could build. It was wonderful, but I realized more than sustainable homes, that to be truest to that calling I had when I was 25 years ago, that I really wanted to get back to full time running a not-for-profit NGO within the context of education. So we made the big leap, moved to the island of Curaçao, population of 150,000. And for your listeners, very close to Venezuela, and obviously a little precarious these days with things going on there, but we are pretty immune, as it seems, and removed, even though we're that close. It's a wonderful country. It's a wonderful island. There's 55 different cultures that call this place home. It does not have a lot of challenges other places have with post-colonial, post-slavery, division and conflict. It is incredibly harmonious. There's not a single day that goes by, Rushton, that I'm not immensely grateful for living in such a place that the interactions, more than anything, from children to elders to everyone at the bank to the yesterday meeting with universities and schools, and every interaction is just so sincere, so kind-hearted. The people, I mean, it's for that we are here and love it. So with Awenyo, we started this a year and a half ago. My board is comprised of quite a cultural diversity as well, of locals coming from, and they say "you Curaçao." That means child of Curaçao. So someone who's from here. We don't necessarily say Curaçao Leño. We say "you Curaçao." It's a beautiful expression. And what's interesting is anyone who has the right attitude is considered. I mean, before we moved here, an elder local elderly lady looked at my son, who's this white blonde hair. And he's playing with this young little black girl, and they're playing as sweet and innocent as one can. And she's tearing up, and she looks at them playing, and she points at my son, and she says, "You Curaçao." And that melted our hearts, and we knew this was our home because it was just so welcoming. We weren't seen as foreigners, expat, extranjero, gringo. We were welcome, and we had about 7 people before we even made the choice to move here. They said, "This is your home." So what we do with Awenyo, to jump over to what we're doing, our inspiration, we started, with this board that we have of locals, and we said, how do we really help the country generationally speaking, decade after decade? Think really big picture. And we have a bit of a exodus, like many places, of young people leaving. Those with the most talent and capacity, they go off to Holland, pretty much, mostly. And we realized that we needed to build capacity in these young people that have a different vision, to not have this dependency mindset, nor this mindset of life is only about my own self-interest, my own pursuits, my own passion, to be more in line with Rotary's vision of that my well-being and the well-being of others is intimately connected, which is what I ended up doing. My whole master's thesis was that. It's the nexus, the integration of those two, and the how that contributes to our own well-being and the well-being of community. So then we designed a few programs. Our main 2 programs are, on the one side, a teacher training program. So it takes the guise of professional development, yes, but it's really capacity building. And what we mean by that is we work with local teachers. It's free. There's no cost, which the local schools look at us with disbelief because they don't understand how this could be free. They're used to paying for high-end experts flown from all over. So we work with these local teachers over the entire year, and we bring them together once a month for these day-long training seminars on a variety of different themes. We deal with, inner discipline within students. We deal with nurturing self-directed learning and all such wonderful progressive learning methods. But behind the scenes, deeper than this, what we're actually trying to do is to raise up the capacity of these teachers so they become the protagonists. They become the experts, that they don't necessarily need to be in that same dependency mindset where they need experts to be flown in from abroad, that they can call upon expertise and insights and pedagogy as need, but within themselves, in a collective space, coming together once a month, they can reflect, they can analyze, they can innovate, almost like social scientists, as it were, or as experts in their own crops, let's say, to use an analogy, right? So they can try applying a different technique in their class. One teacher said to us, I'm usually my students are all in rows, and I decided to try something after our seminar. So she started grouping them in clusters of 5 in a little cluster with a few little plants in the middle and so on. And we talked about it. We brought her back together. She said this was a teacher that used to yell at her students. She was one of our most challenging ones to work with. Scary as anything if you walk into this class when she's losing it, right? And she's like, it's fascinating because when I put them together in groups, what I'm noticing is they look to each other to learn and ask questions rather than always asking me, which is very pragmatic, but it's very profound. And what it says is, through this inspiration she's implementing, it's not, and I didn't give the suggestion, our trainers didn't suggest this, but with the inspiration, she tried this innovation. analyzed it collectively in the group. What did I learn? Does it work? Does it not? And then pass the learning on. So we're trying to create this culture where there's again, we're using that word protagonist. We're creating a community of, again, call it scientists for lack of a better expression in this context, but so that they become the experts, that we can give them new concepts and ideas, but let them see which ones fit, which ones apply, and which ones don't. So we're building that capacity within them. And a lot of it is learning to bring out the potential of the students, because we have this traditional rote learning model here that, like so many places still, that is very top down, that is very hierarchical. And we work very gently, lovingly with the teachers, with the school boards. We've been working closely with Ministry of Education. So we respect the system, but we recognize there's room creatively to find innovation, right? Is what we try to focus on. The school system here, unlike America and Canada, is very stratified. Let's say at 12, they write an exam and you go to this higher level or this lower level based on that. So we can't necessarily change that system per se, and nor do we within Awenyo aspire, but what we can do is empower the teachers to work in a way that recognizes capacity within students, to recognize talent, potential, other learning methods, to be innovative so that we are not creating a caste system, let's say, and we are not creating mere factory workers, just skilled workers at the base, and then another class of students that all en masse leave for other countries, so we're trying to work within the system, but by empowering the teachers to reflect and realize different ways to connect with students, to bring out potential, nurture these students to recognize that there are options in life if they didn't do so well on that one singular exam that set them in this other school track, that they can also innovate, they can start their own businesses, they can find ways to give back to the island. So the second thing that we do is working with outside of the school system, because we recognize we need a stratified, a very diversified approach to our holistic vision of upliftment, empowerment. So we work with youth. What do we do there? We work with the older ones that are 16 to 25. Again, we take them through a capacity building leadership program that spans 1 year, and we empower them to work with the younger youth. And it's key for us that we connect these two generations. Why? Because here, a lot of the young people are growing up in single parent households. Fathers, 40% of children don't have a father figure existing in their lives. And so and therefore the mother or the other parent is compensate. So you have a lot of these young people that are growing up without a lot of guidance and role modeling. So we're trying to develop this framework where we have the older ones that become these guides, these role models we call animators, that guide the younger youth in groups, in small informal group setting, usually coming together once a week. And they are guiding the young ones through a framework that is around character building, around virtues, and it also has, it touches on their scholastic, so it has a language capacity, mathematical capacity, but at the heart of it is empowerment. It's making healthy choices. It's thinking about your sense of belonging, your sense of purpose, your sense of capacity, that you're not just just a mere, spoke in the wheel on a small island, that within each one of us is so much potential to contribute, to make a difference. So in these small groups, gradually, organically, they start to foster community service projects initiated endogenously from within the group. It's not imposed from the system, from Awenyo, with their older youth animator. Each group is able to identify and start to reflect over time, what are the needs of our community, our island, and then they start to formulate their own projects and carry those projects out. So it's a action reflection space, right? And as they go, we start to introduce other elements of the program around sustainability, climate change and responsibility, gender equality, and so on and so on. So it's a micro lab, if you will, in these spaces where there's this safety, this trust, this sort of loving friendship with an older youth that cares about them. And we've had some youth say to us, Rushton, my animator believed in me at a time when I didn't even believe in myself. So they're, these 12-year-olds are having this 18-year-old who dearly cares about them, that wants to be there to mentor. They're feeling discriminated at school. Parents just, and these are all in the last few weeks, instances that we've come across. Parents have just broken up. One girl, she's 12, dad's in prison, hasn't seen dad in 7 years, doesn't know how to cope with this. So the animator in these groups is helping be there for them, support them. One is struggling in school simply because Dutch is not their first language. They've just moved here from Haiti or from Colombia. So this animator is that sort of a tutor, if you will, sort of a coach, but more than anything, it's a peer, like a big brother, big sister in that regard. The groups operate in all four languages. Like I said, we've connected with a lot of the schools, with a lot of the different church groups. The Ministry of Education has been really supportive. So we have great hopes long term for expanding this program really across the island and to other islands and beyond. But year one, we're in a pilot mode, and so far it is really exciting. This Friday, actually, we're doing our official launch. We're bringing all these animators together. The last year and a half, we've been piloting a few groups, particularly in a few schools. We have over 100 kids currently, even though we had intended to only have 50 for our last year pilot. But so now with these new 15 that we're training, each of whom will have their own 10 or so students. So yes, we'll be growing this, and year two we hope to double that. So
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the mechanics of what you've got going with Awenyo. I'll first introduce the team that we've got here on the recording this early Wednesday morning as we're doing this. So my name is Rushton Hurley. I am in the San Francisco Bay Area in the United States. Chris Cochran is with us. He is actually a charter member of the Rotary E Club of Silicon Valley, and now with the District 7040 Passport Club. Chris, always good to see you, sir. And so, Mike, let's jump into the questions this way. As you think about what it is that Awenyo is doing, you're in this pilot mode. You have this hope to expand. What are the markers that for you show that Awenyo is really doing what you hope? Like what do you put out there as the metrics by which people can say, got it, this is really working?
Yeah, great question. And what we've tried to do is integrate, the hard metrics, the quantitative and the qualitative. So qualitatively speaking, it's in a lot of those anecdotes. It's in a lot of those stories, those instances. And as myself and my team are working very closely, intimately with each of these trained older youth, hearing those kind of that feedback, those stories of the effect it's having, listening also, and we have built into the program meeting with parents, on a regular basis, so that again, qualitatively, so we're able to hear and feedback what kind of changes they're seeing within their younger youth. And then, we also look at the quantitative as well, because that's important. So we look at the obvious, the hard numbers of how many youth we've trained, what number of the younger, we call them junior youth, are into these programs. And we also, I should have mentioned, we also connect with the university's social work program. We're in talks about how we can collaborate and possibly for future years integrate into their internship system. That's for the years to come, as I say. We also work with some of the, in Curaçao, one of the unique realities is we have an after school facility sort of culture that majority of the students after school gets out at 12:31 for most schools. And the majority of the kids of the country go to these after school facilities. I don't know that we have a name in North America, but almost a daycare, but certainly not, because it goes all the way up to 16, 17. So they're sort of drop-in centers, we might call them, but they're somewhat structured. They do their homework, they have instruction, but then it's games and free play. So we've been collaborating with a number of those spaces so that our trained youth can integrate in. So we look at the hard numbers, as I say, how many youth are we impacting? How many of the junior youth are we connecting with directly? And by extension, how many families are we affecting? So we look at the hard numbers. And then in addition, we look at over time how many projects, initiatives are also coming out of these groups. And in the years to come, we're definitely looking at. I've reached out to a few universities, including the ones where I studied, to look at further levels of sort of research analysis, third party evaluation of the metrics of what we're doing.
So that one of the interesting things about your experience is that being in a place where community is so palpable an experience for the people who are there, right? That qualitative measures can essentially be that cornerstone on which you build. And it also seems to me that for a lot of efforts systemically anywhere, getting to meaningful quantitative measures involves an early series of successes that are built around qualitative measures, right?
Yeah.
And so as you think about the people in the community there, they are buying in quickly, and by buying in, I mean supporting what's going on in a way that they see as valuable for their young people. Are there very specific wishes that they have for their children beyond their safety, their opportunity to get a good education and have a meaningful job later? Are there other concerns that families have that lead them to being interested in what's going on with Awenyo?
Yeah, great question again. And for that last year during our pilot phase, we did have a quite a series of meeting with schools, teachers, parents, families to really just take the year to be a listening year while we were also innovating and piloting with a couple of groups. Particularly at one school, we've been really closely working with about 90 of their students, and that school was our training ground. We had four youth that arose and that we went through the training and that we would cycle through at this school to practice and to learn. But during the listening mode, as I said, it was a lot of generalized, a sense of hope, a sense of purpose, a sense of opportunity because that family maybe can't afford for their student or they didn't score academically such that they can go off. University was foregone. After that 12-year-old exam, if you were in the lower ranking school structure, the prospects of university are almost nil to you. It's unfortunate, but it's kind of a reality here. So with those families that feel that sense of partial despair and concern for the future of their young ones, trying to their hope within the program is that there's other opportunities, other ways that their youth can do something, not just let's say work at the local hotel or serving, and of course if that's their passion, that's wonderful, but to provide a bit more of a range of opportunity. So that was one for sure. We had some instances where a youth felt very isolated, uh, bits of discrimination within their particular school. Latino kids from Haitian background, Jamaican background, various different sort of backgrounds had felt a bit of discrimination here and there. Maybe not all instances, but some. So again, this is really integrated into the program where we deal with these questions. We have groups that are very diverse, small group settings where there's 8 or 9 kids, where they can have conversations about how to overcome bullying, cyberbullying, discrimination, things like this. So those were some of the things that came up, and just a general concern that there's almost I don't know if I can say a calm before the storm, if you will, but in Curacao, in terms of crime, in terms of safety, in terms of a lot of things, it's in a good place relative to other places. But there's a fear, among a lot of parents with the explosion of social media and the influence and the values that come from social media and the exodus of a lot of the youth out of the country. There's this fear that and in the falling away of sort of that importance of moral character building, moral values and instruction, a lot of the parents express this worry of what 10 years from now for their young ones and other young ones look like in terms of crime rates, in terms of violence, in terms of teen pregnancies and things. So those again are very much factored in and included, and those are age appropriately dealt with gradually in these groups with the careful guidance of their animator to address some of these concerns and issues. But we do so at one level, at the you know at a conversation level with the youth. But the backbone of the program is rooted in such a strong character building, fostering a sense of higher purpose, of values, of positive choices, of giving back, of being of service to others. So that runs throughout the entire program. And what we've seen, we have a lot of relationships with other NGOs in different countries that have been working with a very similar program that we've been collaborating on some of the materials. And NGOs, one of our sister agencies in Uganda, another one in Colombia, have been running very similar programs for 10 years and have seen remarkable transformations in universities that have done a quantitative and a qualitative analysis of real transformation, which is hard to denote in a few months or in a 6 months, but over a 3-year stretch, you can start to see these transformations in young people. So,
okay. So Chris and I have several more questions that we'll put to you before we wind things down. But what drew you to Curaçao specifically? There are a lot of places. You just mentioned several. What got you there? Was there a particular experience or moment or article or what was it?
yeah, that's a great question. And I had spent a good part of a year prior to us moving here, researching different countries. We sort of took a year off and traveled to Samoa in the South Pacific, if you can believe. We lived there for a couple months. We were in Medellin, Colombia for a few months as well. Mexico, a few different parts of Mexico. And we really fallen in love in so many places, particularly with Mexico, with the Yucatan. We actually had our compasses set on Merida, which is one of the safest cities. They say it's the second safest city in all of North America. Lovely city if anyone gets a chance to go visit. And en route, we stopped into Aruba at one point, one of our trips back to Mexico. We stopped in, we met some local families that were actually from Curaçao, which, of course, you have ABC Islands, Aruba, Curaçao, and Bonaire, and they call them the ABC Islands. And North Americans are very familiar with Aruba, not just from the Beach Boys song, but it's familiar to us. But Curaçao less so. Certainly in Canada, much of our friend group back home weren't quite sure where exactly in the world we were moving. So we stopped into Aruba. It was meant to be a few days. Met this family, a few families that were actually from the neighboring, the next door island of Curaçao. We impromptu that night changed all the plans, changed the flights, and hopped on over to Curacao. 1 week became 2, and then 3, and we still carried on to Mexico. And we landed back into Merida, where we had said we were going to be moving. And we loved the people, we loved the culture, but we said to ourselves, of all the places we've lived in the world, there's nowhere that's actually said to us, just so you know, it's great you're moving to this other country, but my island is your island. My home is your home. This is your home. You're always welcome here. And we had about 7, as I mentioned earlier, we had about 7 different people independent of each other, local, Curaçao, that said to us, you're always welcome here. Consider this your home, even though you're moving to Mexico. That's great. And that just deeply moved us. And we wanted to be in a place where we weren't always the foreigner, always the expat or the gringo. We wanted to, with the right humility and respect, to integrate in such a way that one could live and become part of the community, not outside of it. And that's really central with Awenyo, is that we're not just an outsider agency, NGO that's coming to do good, of the people, with the people, the locals as the experts, as the protagonists, not merely the participants, right? And hence why on our board, I'm the only one who's not born and raised here. So that was really important to us. And that was more than anything, it wasn't the physical geography, which that said, is a gorgeous, beautiful island, and many other wonderful characteristics. But it was just the heart of the people.
Well, that brings together a couple of ideas. You talk about the amazing welcoming spirit there, but also the issue of having young people leave, right? And that has plenty in common with rural parts of North America, where small towns
Yeah.
are seeing their young people leave for opportunities in cities. From a Silicon Valley perspective, there is a certain trust in the potential of entrepreneurship, right? That if people are given enough opportunity and enough mentoring, that they might choose to start businesses in places where it is not merely an opportunity for them, but an opportunity for others in their community via their drive to make something happen. Is that a part of how you work with the animators? Because you're coaching them even as they coach the younger people, correct?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's a two-pronged training. You train the older, and then they in turn train the younger. And it's very true. And I've lived and worked in a lot of different parts of the world. And sometimes in Canada we refer to it as a brain drain. But it's that diaspora. It's that exodus of the young, of the young, the capable, those with intellectual capacity and talents. It's a one way out. Whether it's intra country in terms of our rural areas, or it's one island to Europe, to North America. And it's a real challenge, and it's a global challenge that we're all struggling with. And the solutions are not so simple. And it isn't as simple as saying to a young person, well, you should really be staying, because who am I, or who are we to say that they can't make that transition? So if I can just give you two quick stories. I met this one young local youth, super talented, top of his class. And I meet him, he's 18. What are you doing next year? Well, I'm going off to Holland to study medicine. I said, well, that's great. You know that there's obviously medical universities here in Curaçao. I said, yes, but I don't want to stay on this little island. I want to go to Holland. Okay. Do you think there's a chance that you might come back at some point and ever, live and give back to Curaçao? He looked at me with astonishment. He said, what has this island ever done for me? No, I'm never coming back. And obviously, we hadn't worked with this young person. This is just, and could one blame him? No. But that's sort of the paradigm, that's becoming kind of a global mindset, especially among the young. Not to entirely disparage the value system of social media and so on, but that's not uncommon to all of us and our listeners, that the values of pursue your own self-interest, which is what many of the young are doing, and there's a validation to them doing so. But with the program, we're trying to shift that so that, exactly as you said at the beginning, and which is at the heart of our program, that my well-being and my talents and my achievements, trying to integrate that and align it with giving back, to being of service to community. And so, by comparison, there's another young individual that we've been working with for the last year. When I met him, he was 21, and he had such a rough childhood. He lived with a daddy after mom left in the middle of the night when he was young. And at one point, dad fell into hard times, and they're living out of a car for 3 years, no house, uncle's home to do a shower. Just a horrible, horrible upbringing. I can't even recount how awful, difficult it was. And he's just a walking miracle in terms of his holding it together, his having his life straightened, having a job. And he was working at a pizza shop, which is where we met him, our favorite pizza shop. We've been working with him, building his capacity through this program, and gradually also supplementing what we were doing with mentorship around starting your own initiative, starting your own business, right to very practical business planning and some budgeting and marketing and so on. And this young man today has three different businesses. His one pizza shop of his own that he started is well known to everyone on the island. He does four times the income he was doing flipping pizzas before. He's got his own walking tour tourism business, and he's on and upward. So that's the kind of success story. Those are the metrics that of the qualitative type that we really take a lot of courage and inspiration from, and that's what we're aspiring for. And it's it's the same vision that very much with rural youth in whatever country is not insisting, not pressuring, not certainly not shaming those that leave, but giving enough opportunity, and not just the opportunities, but the shift of mindset within, that your sense of purpose, your well-being, when it's entirely self-oriented, against what our more popular culture suggests, doesn't always lead to the true lasting joys and fulfillment that we think in. I mean, I say this every time I meet with a Rotary Club. I mean, I definitely don't need to elaborate the point too much to those within Rotary, because this is an axiom that is so self-evident, so imminent in their thinking. And I say that because every time I meet with a Rotary Club, the members of which are working so tirelessly for so many projects and with nothing in return other than the joy of helping, the joy of seeing others shine and flourish, right? So the point is to encapsulate some of that idea, that thinking. And I said, against the common wisdom of popular culture that says no, focus on one's own self-interest. That in itself will be the hallmark of lasting joy and fulfillment. And the reality is no, it's when we fuse those two, as Rotary does.
Well, I think that's a good place to wind things down. What I'll do is I'll finish up and then hand it back to you for two things. I want you to give an explanation of how people might help if they choose to do so, and then just the final word that you'll want people to have in mind as they finish up. But all of you who have been watching this recording or listening to the podcast recording of this talk, thank you. Thank you for taking your time to get to know the kinds of things that are happening around the world, the stories that we get the privilege to share, and to help spread that sense of there are possibilities in a space where often the news is bad, or at least that's what the news focuses on, the bad news. That we get that chance to say, look at the amazing things that are happening in so many places. So with that, thank you again. We hope that you will let us know you were here. There's a little attendance form on our page at SiliconValleyRotary.com, or more easily accessed at Rotary.cool. All right, and let us know. We love hearing from the folks who take in the recordings that we have. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. Mike, talk to us about support and final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Rushton. And again, before all else, thank you so much for having us. It's really the greatest compliment and support in itself that you've reached out and allowed us this opportunity to share. We are, as I said before, we're an organization that does not ask of the youth, obviously, and the families that we work with, nor the schools and the school boards for any funding, against their shock and surprise. And we aspire to be fully self-funded from a variety of sources. You know, there's a usually a 4-month window from applying for funds to hearing back. So we're very patient in that process, looking for European funds and other different funding sources. But definitely, if there's ways that Rotary and or individual members wish to engage and contribute, we're always open to anyone that wants to help financially support, or in other ways. We're always looking to see if there's those with resources, with insights, if there's those that are working in similar capacities, similar programs. We'd love to collaborate and find ways that we could cross-pollinate and share insights. A lot of the work we do really is unique to Curaçao, but it's programs and content that would be very beneficial, very useful in other parts of the world. The third line of action we didn't talk about, which is for another time, is we do multimedia development and learning materials. So that's where, again, it's very shareable content that we generate. Some of our lesson plans or training materials, we're very open source in that regard, that we've been building a lot of this with the intention that we can share it beyond the shores of Curaçao.
Fantastic, Mike. Thank you, and thank everyone for being a part of this. We will see you next week.